You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
I got Fantha. It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file.
That doesn't sound too hard.
Boom! This is Making Tracks.
This is the way.
Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
I know these people. They are brutal. Does this look Jedi to you?
That's not how the Force works.
They'll never see it coming.
Count me in.
Mr. Mac!
You're listening to Making Tracks. I'm your co-host Mark Newbold, and joining me today is the man who makes a Hoojit look suicidal. It's Mark Mulcaster. How you doing?
It's only because I grab it by its tail and swing it around my head. So I'm good, dude. How are you?
I'm very well. We have loads to talk about. Nothing in the news this week particularly, but it's all from last week. It is, because we never had a chance to talk last week because we were those, starships that pass in the night last week.
Exactly. Yeah, we were just like two big frigates crossing over and firing at each other.
I know those websites with two big frigates in it. So first things first.
Yeah.
You were part
Yes.
of a Guinness World Record breaking. I was going to say attempt. It wasn't an attempt. It was successful. Tell us more about it, Mark.
We were down at the old Naval College in Greenwich, which, if you haven't been down there, it's a fantastic place. It's historical, but also from a movie perspective, a ton of films have been shot there and used for various different things over time. Marvel, a couple of James Bond films were shot there. They had two scenes. But basically it was in conjunction with the centenary of Elstree Studios. The world record attempt was quite narrow. It's like normally with these record attempts, it's like the most amount of Batmans in one place. So this had an interesting remit of you had to wear a costume from a film that was either filmed at Elstree Studios or at Greenwich. So the one that narrowed it down, but also they then made criteria so you couldn't just rock up in any old clobber and go, I'm Darth Vader and stuff. Darth Vader had a specific items that needed to be worn. So they limited it down just to basically give like the whole process and a bit of a helping hand. Otherwise, you could just turn up as anything, like I said.
Yeah.
Rebel Legion and the 501st UK Garrison, we were in attendance, and actually we had a little Star Wars zone with droid builders, and so we had some of our sets up, and that was like a free area that people could just kind of come in and take photos and stuff throughout the day as well. So we were there. It was basically a new record, which meant that Guinness had set the threshold at 500. There was 2,700 and something registered interest on the website. And actually what happened, which is kind of ironic for the costume clubs anyway, people turned up in their costumes and were turned away because they didn't meet the requirements. They didn't meet the criteria.
Wow.
So once it was all kind of processed and everybody was processed and given wristbands and stuff, I think it was just over 800, wasn't it?
874.
So yeah, I don't know. Did you win?
Did you get a plaque? Were you given a little bit of paper? Did anybody pat you on the backside and say, well done, Mark?
They had the certificate there. And obviously, if you imagine 800 people all kind of gathered around this certificate and stuff, and there's group photos and stuff. But actually, what I'm planning to do is for the troopers who did attend, we're going to do our own little patch. Because you know what troopers are like when it comes to like patches and stuff.
Yes.
It's like catnip. So I'm going to do that instead. Obviously, the organizer, she was very happy with us, and we got to chat in with the head of studios for Elstree. That was cool. So we're hoping to maybe do some more stuff leading into the actual centenary of Elstree Studios.
Well, we had the good news this week, didn't we, that Studios 7, 8 and 9 were reopened after their refurb. So that's good news. That's pushing ahead for Elstree as well, isn't it?
Well, that's good, because actually what's quite interesting, and I don't know if you've covered this on the site, some of these studios that have started to be built have stalled, and there's just not actually enough things being shot in them at the moment for various different reasons. Because I think at one point, Elstree was, what is Elstree doing, really? It
was on its arse at one point, wasn't it? It was struggling.
Yeah. I mean, basically, other than Big Brother, it didn't really do much else. I mean, but they shot the crown there.
True.
So it was a fun day. And actually, thankfully, the weather was good because it was all basically outside. We spent a lot of time walking around these places because actually the whole of the old Naval College is, because it's designed by Christopher Wren, it's mirrored. But the different rooms some of them are literally mirrored, virtually the same, and others of the Grand Hall and that. It's spectacular. And if anybody's checked out my Instagram, there's a really cool photo of an Aston Martin DB5 in the hall, which just looks like amazing. And definitely something that I didn't have on my bingo card to set a world record for this year. So,
well,
yeah.
I'm thrilled for you. I'm thrilled just by the warm glow of association that I know somebody that's broken a record. The photographs were cool as well. We did put a piece up on Fantha, so the photographs were very cool. So you got some great snaps from there.
The location itself lends itself to just cool, epic photos.
Good stuff. So you're celebrating being a world record holder.
Yep.
I'm celebrating 20 years of podcasting. So 5th of October, 2005, when I was running Lightsaber, I'd been going for 6 years, myself and Louis Turfrey. And Louis decided, in his infinite wisdom, and weirdly it did turn out to be infinite, that we should at some point do a podcast. I don't even know if it was called a podcast back then. I don't even know if the phrase was the thing. I honestly can't remember. Just sat down and got the most rudimentary recording equipment. I can't even remember what we used. I think we did 17 episodes over, 18 months. I just seem to think that everything was recorded on something completely different because the sound quality is like a roller coaster. But anyway, here's a clip of me and Louis from the first episode of Setting Radio, October the 5th, 2005, talking a little bit about Star Wars.
Which brings me round, strangely enough, in a very circular way, to the new Star Wars. Yes. Now, we know it's not going to hit the cinema, well, at least the screens, until at least 2007. At least, the two shows are going to be kicking off, which everybody who listens to this is going to know about. There's the CG, Singapore-made, I believe, animated Clone Wars series, which I don't know what network it's going to be shown on. I would imagine it'll be shown on Cartoon Network, but they're not using Tartakovsky, which they use for the Clone Wars micro series, which I think is a shame because he's a genius. Yeah. And from my personal point of view, purely my personal point of view, and we've said this before, I can't see the point in doing the Clone Wars animated series because we've covered that ground in novels, in comics, in books, in the Clone Wars micro series. It's been alluded to in the films. You know, we've waited for 30 years nearly for the Clone Wars. They were mentioned in Star Wars. Ben mentioned them in his when he was telling Luke about, his heritage. So the Clone Wars have been talked about for all that time. Yeah. And yet, in many respects, now that we've entered the cities out, I feel like it's like knowing the result of a football match and then watching the game. I don't feel like I need to know anything else about the Clone Wars, particularly. And I'm sure, we write fiction on Lightsaber, and I did a whole bunch at the start of the year, because before Episode 3 came out, before Sith came out, purely I wanted to write Clone Wars stories, because one, I wanted to get into that frame of mind for that era, and of course it was the Natami stuff that we'd both done way back. Yeah. And also, it's nice to tell your own stories in that battle era, because it's a broad canvas and it covered the galaxy, and you pretty much know you could write a story as long as you've not got Yoda or Mace Windu or some big character diving in, that you're not going to step on anyone's toes. Yeah. I think if they're going to do it, they're going to have to do it very cleverly. It's going to have to be the untold stories. It's going to be the things about the little characters that make the difference. I think that's the only way they're going to get away with it. I can't see any big stuff happening there. But you say that, but thinking about it, and I know what you're saying, I think what you've just said is going to be what's going to be happening in the live-action series, because with the CG series, you can get a voice actor to play Anakin or play Ben or whoever, and they can get away with using all the main characters, whereas with the live-action show, where rumours are starting to kick on now, and you've got a very cool rumour about Nathan Fillion, haven't you? Lucas has said, it's not going to use the main characters, it's not going to be the big guys, but we already know, fandom's going to go nuts if you don't have at least one scene with the, you're telling me they're not going to be able to get Ian McDiarmid to do a couple of scenes a season? Of course they are. I wouldn't be at all surprised. No, I'm lying. If it happens, I will be surprised. But as I'm saying it now, I wouldn't even be surprised if they did a couple of episodes with Ewan McGregor. If that guy's going to go riding around the back of Beyond on his motorbike, I'm sure he'll do a couple of Star Wars episodes. He doesn't hate it that much. In fact, I got the impression that he actually really enjoyed doing the trilogy. From what I heard, he had a great deal of fun. Yeah, and he enjoyed Sith, definitely. Absolutely. So that wouldn't be... He enjoyed the physicality of it, actually. You reckon there was more physicality in that than there was in the previous two? And Hayden, he got such a buzz out of being in that suit. If they need Darth Vader, it will be Hayden Christensen playing Darth Vader, and it damn well should be as well. Good on him. I think he did a good job in Sith. I think he did a good job in Clones, looking back at it. Yeah.
Well, hasn't your voice dropped?
Had to happen, didn't it? Had to happen.
Eventually, yeah.
Had to happen, yeah.
So I tell you one thing, actually. 2004, the term podcast was basically coined because the first delivery format was an iPod.
We were pretty early on that train.
I can't remember when or why I started listening to podcasts, but obviously the first one I listened to was Forcecast. I think it was around about Star Wars Celebration 4.
Yeah.
All those episodes of Lightsaber, are you going to release those? Are they actually on the Fantha library? Because I think they
exist.
Yes.
They do. I need to, I need to catch up with Louis to make sure he's happy with me doing it. I probably need to listen to them because a couple of them were Stella Artois fueled. So we would record at all sorts of weird times. It's a bit like streaming. One episode would be like half an hour long and the next one would be 10 minutes. So they were all over the place. But yes, I should do that. Yeah, I should get them on there.
Yeah, how many episodes did you record?
17.
But what would be interesting would be to see if there's any kind of really savant-like predictions that you happen to kind of like stumble upon about, like, I don't know, it wouldn't be great if like Star Wars was brought out by Disney or something. I don't know.
I can guarantee that we would put the idiot in Idiot Savant. In that clip, you hear me talking about like the Clone Wars and about other bits and bobs like that. So I'd be quite interested, because it's been a long time since I've listened to them, quite interested to go back and have a listen. But yes, we should do that. We should put them on the Fantha stream just because.
Hi, this is Ashley Eckstein, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Next bit of news, we haven't talked about the trailer for The Mandalorian and Grogu. I'm very, very curious to see what you think about this. It came out a couple of weeks ago. We got our new poster, we got our new logo, we have a new trailer. We're still 230 odd days away from the thing coming out, but at least we're going to hang our hat on the first trailer. So, Mark, what did you make of it?
Somehow the Razor Crest returned.
Looking like a chunky Y-wing flying backwards.
A little bit, didn't it? Yeah. I mean, it's very much a teaser. You don't really get too much of a sense of like exactly what the plot is. You just get these, mainly character moments about Grogu and some action. But it looks freaking cool. Admittedly, I'd have to go back and double check and rewatch this, maybe compared to say like an actual Mandalorian TV series trailer. But yeah, it doesn't look massively different from what we've seen back then. We just see a massive, giant-sized, muscled Hutt as a man. He's in that. It's going to set people up for film. It does exactly what it needs to do. I know there was some stuff which came out at Celebration, and I think a couple of shots might have been from that, but I don't think it was much. I mean, what did you think? I mean, it does feel very much more like, probably the closest thing I could think of is almost like that Force Awakens teaser trailer, where it's basically just shots of people.
Actually, the Phantom Menace trailer was a bit like that, wasn't it? It was out of because you hadn't seen the film, so it was all out of context. I liked it. I mean, people are criticising it because it looks like the TV show. Doesn't that say a lot about the TV show? That it is so cinematic and that it looks so good?
Exactly. And it looks like, okay, fine. There's definitely clear use of the volume. But then this was partly the remit, really, wasn't it, of this film? Budgets have kind of run away with themselves. And so this has always been touted to be slightly more cost effective. I can't remember what the reported.
185 was what I'd heard.
I mean, so that's cheaper than, what we've had before in the past by several million. That's still a lot of millions for a film, which I think is sensible, given that this year's the first year in, I don't know how many years, that a blockbuster franchise film hasn't really reached the top 5, other than Jurassic.
That's a really good point. I mean, it's 7 years since we had a Star Wars movie, a new Star Wars movie. Obviously, we've had re-releases. Great point about Jurassic being the only real big franchise film this year. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this does. I think we've spoken about it before. I certainly know Brian and Paul have talked about it on Good Morning Tatooine. Yeah. And I think their thought process was similar to ours. I don't think we're expecting $1 billion movie. I think we're probably thinking 600 or 700 million would be a very tidy haul.
I was going to say, I think a really good outing would be 750. I think that's going to be
Ragnarok money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And actually, ironically, it's got an arena in it, like Ragnarok. So, with a giant, steroid bound up.
But I wonder what other sort of stuff, now that we're sort of in the sort of the final stretch on the grand scheme of things. It comes out in May, so we're already in October. So we're sort of 6 or 7 months away now. What else we can expect? We haven't got a celebration next year. We've got a celebration the year after that. So Starfighter will have the rub of a celebration, whereas Mando and Grogu won't. But then you can only imagine that once these adverts start hitting Disney Plus, that every time you switch on anything on Disney Plus, you'll probably get a teaser or something for Mando and Grogu, a little interstitial of the little guy running across the bottom of the screen or whatever they want to do. It'll certainly get the promotion, but it'll be interesting to see when it lands, where we're going to be with premieres, where we're going to be with other ancillary stuff sort of feeding into it. Because as we've said before, Favreau and Filoni have kept a real tight lid on that era. with Mando, with Boba, with Ahsoka, with Skeleton Crew, all the stuff that's in this era that's very much their sort of chunk of time. So it'll be interesting to see how they play it.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't imagine we're going to get a journey to the Mando and Grogu like we did for the sequel trilogy films.
No.
And I mean, I suppose one could argue is actually how much did those really offer to the actual viewing experience of those films? Not really a huge amount, I don't think. You know, the big one being the Aftermath trilogy, which kind of set the scene a little bit, but not even enough that, you know, when you went into Force Awakens, you kind of knew what was going on. It was a publishing opportunity, but it's how much you can tie it in and how much we're going to let you tie it in. That
lead up to Force Awakens, it almost feels now, looking back, that there were some misdirects, unintentional maybe, but, you know, Psycho Plank had a book all about that character, barely in the film. Zuvio had an action figure, and he was sort of in some of the pre-release material. Then he's in 3 frames of the film. So it makes you wonder, I wonder if there's any misdirects that we've seen on screen. Hey, anyone who watched the very first trailer for Rogue One, that's the biggest misdirect in movie history, because nothing in that trailer is in the film. So I wonder if there's anything in that trailer that we've seen. And I think from what we've kind of heard, I mean, nothing's official. It's only what we hear from other people. But this film was filmed and shut and locked and pretty much done ages ago. So they can be quite judicious in what they show. You mentioned Celebration. We saw that scene inside the AT-AT, the attack in the AT-AT, where they're working their way towards the command base of the AT-AT, which was a phenomenal scene and brilliantly shot and really exciting. But none of that really is in here, apart from the shot of the AT-AT falling off the cliff.
I still don't quite know who thought it was a good idea to put that test shot of a TIE fighter, which is what it was a VFX test shot. You know, that probably the most iconic shot from Rogue One leading up into that film.
What, with Jyn on the platform with the TIE coming up? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. That was just a test shot that they did to prove the workflow and the compositing. It's a great shot and it deserves to be shown and stuff. But when she gets up there, I think everybody was like,
where's the TIE fighter?
Where's the TIE fighter? Yeah, well, how's she going to get out of that? I mean, the big takeaway is obviously you've got Sigourney Weaver, but probably the other big takeaway is Babu Frick or whoever that, you know.
Yeah, the Anzellans,
Anzellans, you know. I'm pretty much certain that come May of next year, you're going to be seeing Grogu's and like Babu Frick plushies everywhere. If it doesn't do the money in the box office, they're probably relying quite heavily on the merchandising to kind of like shore it up.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
Florida SuperCon welcomed John Boyega onto the stage. He did a panel. He was asked about all sorts of stuff throughout his career. Of course, he was also asked about Star Wars. An audience member got up and asked what he would do if he was able to remake the sequel trilogy. A loaded question if ever there was one. But he was incredibly honest with his answer. John said, it would be mad. First of all, we're not getting rid of Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, all these people. We're not doing that. The first thing we're going to do is fulfill their story, fulfill their legacy. We're going to make a good moment of handing on the baton. Our new characters will not be OP'd, by that he means overpowered, in these movies. They won't just grab stuff and know what to do with it. No, you've got to struggle like every other character of this franchise. I'd do that. And then he looks to say, in terms of influences he would pull from, I'd look to the Old Republic stories and see what we can add to the continuation of that. I would definitely want to see Force Unleashed stories in there. I would try and expand the Star Wars universe as much as possible while respecting the lore. If we're expanding the lore, we have to do it within the respective boundaries that stay true. But Luke Skywalker wouldn't be disappearing on a rock. Hell no. Standing there and he's like a projector. I would want to give those characters way more. And that's what he says. So, Mark, lots to dig into there.
Oh, my God.
So much. And it's a tricky one to pick apart, but let's give it our best. So what do you make of this? It's classic Monday morning quarterback.
I was going to say.
This is from a guy that was in them. And we know he had issues with the story of how Finn moves through a supportive character to Rey. What do you make of what John says?
It might just be because it's been written out like that, but it feels a little bit like, okay, I'm just going to go for the cheap pops with this one. I'm going to mention the Old Republic and I'm going to mention Force Unleashed. And I can kind of get the Force Unleashed thing because that's the game of his. I'd imagine he would have played it in that generation. It feels like, okay, cool. I don't know if this was like a panel, say like at Star Fury, where there's no recording and nothing like that's going on and people can just ask questions so you get more honest opinion from their talent. I could imagine that maybe somebody, JJ and Matt, might be like, okay, well, thanks for that. We won't bother calling you again. And even maybe Daisy Ridley might take a little bit of exception to that. I don't know. I mean, I suppose it depends upon how personally you take it. we both know that the sequel trilogy in all its forms is not perfect. Even the best and the strongest film of that series, which is Last Jedi, is still not perfect. And as fans, that's kind of what we're supposed to do. And I think any fan who just can sit here and go, those films weren't without their issues, is probably getting some kind of kickback from Disney. So if to be fair, it's what he would do. And so if he is, as a Star Wars fan, as somebody who's watched the films and would, in an alternate universe, go to that cinema and see these films, yeah, totally get it. And basically some of those plot points that he's suggested is fair game, I think, to be honest. What about you?
It's tricky, isn't it? I mean, like you say, first things first, you're asked a direct question. He's a direct kind of guy, so he's given a direct... Right. And it's in the moment, he's not been asked this question before, probably, in front of a crowd of however many people. As you say, there's a few cheap pops, as wrestling fans would say, so some easy hits there. We would have all loved to have seen, or I say we would have all loved to have seen. That's a blanket statement. You can't say that. A lot of newer fans not that bothered about Han Solo and Luke and Leia, but older fans clearly wanted that moment because it's 7, 8, and 9, the trilogy we never thought we'd get. The one thing I think most older fans would have loved to have seen was just that one moment of the three together.
Yeah.
That wasn't what John was talking about. So he's saying, we're not getting rid of Han, Luke and Leia. We're going to fulfill their legacies and fulfill their stories. Their stories are fulfilled and their legacies are what they are. So we're going to make a good moment of handing on the baton. So he's not mad keen on the destiny of Luke, which he mentions, wouldn't have him Skyping in and dying on a rock. Han Solo, whilst I hated his death because Han's my guy, over the years of more than grown to accept it, it is a key element of what fuels Kylo, and Kylo is the big bad of that trilogy.
Yeah.
And we did get him back for 9 for that wonderful moment on the Death Star. And Carrie Fisher, well, hands were tied because Carrie passed, but also I do think in retrospect that her character should have gone in 8 and it should have been Luke that went in 9, and they should have switched those two around, given that we've literally lost the actress that played that role. I can't quite see the logic of not doing that, but maybe they were just too far down the line, or we have the impression that they weren't really cohesive in the terms of the storyline, so it's not a plot thing particularly.
I also think, like in Nocturne for 6, we know they didn't have a clear direction as to how to approach it for 9. Was it Boxing Day?
So just after 2016, yeah.
Last Jedi had basically wrapped and they were into final post-production. Yeah, so I mean, it's possible, but I guess the problem is that, like, how much could you have sacrificed Leia from the story that you've got? And how are you going to do reshoots if you don't have the actress?
Exactly.
But it is a difficult one.
Well, you imagine, you make a great point there, and this is worth talking about, I think, given what John's kind of put out in the world with his own thoughts. Let's say you do, and like I say, let's say you do decide that you're going to have Leia pass in Last Jedi and not in 9, and Luke's around for 9. So you've already shot Luke's death scene. Well, not using that is fine. You can reshoot. That's a reshoot there. The scenes with Mark and Carrie, that wouldn't happen on Crate, so that would need to be some kind of reshoot. So there's Mark doing a scene not to Carrie anymore. There's the scenes with Carrie and with Admiral Holdo. That whole sequence with the Holdo maneuver, that would have to be reshot. So actually, when you start unpicking it, there's a lot more of her in that film that you couldn't really remove.
Yeah. If you were going to go down that route, the cleanest way for Princess Leia to then die is when she's sucked out of the airlock. Because I suppose the only thing is with that is you've got the moment that actually it was Kylo who intentionally fired on that bridge, knowing full well that his mother was on there, because he hesitates, doesn't he, a little bit?
Yeah.
It's not going to have the same kind of emotional resonance as sticking, running like hand through with a lightsaber, but it would be the cleanest way. And then actually, some of the stuff probably isn't necessarily as vital. So you could probably flip the Luke and Leia scene on Crate.
Just imagine, though, you just saying that has got me thinking, just imagine if Kylo's shot on the bridge of, I think it was the Raddus, wasn't it?
Yeah.
If that attack on the bridge had succeeded in killing Leia, and Kylo's not only killed his father, but also killed his mother.
Emotionally, I don't think the studio was ready for that.
I very much agree. As much as we could and would like to, or some would like to, a lot of people wouldn't want to touch a frame of it. It's very easy to do. We're doing exactly what John did up on stage, aren't we? We're unpicking the trilogy and sort of saying what we might have liked to have seen.
Hello, this is Mark Thompson. I narrate a bunch of the Star Wars audiobooks, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Do or do not. There is no try.
Another thing he says, our new characters will not be overpowered in these movies. They won't just grab stuff and know what to do with it. You've got to struggle like every other character in this franchise. I'd do that. That's not a bad observation. One of the things that was thrown at Rey was that she was a, well, I'll give the air quotes, Mary Sue character. Like Luke wasn't kind of a Mary Sue. Rey had Luke teaching her. Yep. Luke had Obi-Wan, and then Yoda, the Uber Jedi, teaching him. So both of them had these moments of figuring it out for themselves to a degree. You would compare the two and certainly say that the ebb and flow of the Force was probably more in Rey's favour because she did seem to cotton on really quickly. What do you make of what John says with that? You know, she does, you know, you see that sequence on Takodana when she grabs the blaster and very quickly sort of figures out how to fire it and takes out a bunch of First Order troopers. She does seem to pick things up pretty quick. The Jedi mind trick on your guy, Daniel Craig.
There's some where you can kind of go, well, maybe that's inherent in her character. It's kind of a bit like, and actually where Lucas was a bit savvy with Anakin in The Phantom Menace, and you have Qui-Gon qualify how he can be a pod racer. You know, the fact that you can kind of see stuff before it happens, that's a Jedi trait. That's the thing, you don't get that in The Force Awakens. So I kind of get that, but then some of it you can go, well, she's scrappy, and we see that she can kick ass with that staff on Jakku. I mean, it's not exactly a lightsaber, but you can start to draw some tenuous links.
We know Rey has the Force with her.
Yeah.
You know, The Force Awakens is largely about her moving into this period of her life. It's not like Finn didn't pick up a lightsaber more than once in that film and start swinging it around like he knew what he was doing with it. And he's not a Jedi. You would say Finn is no more a Jedi than, from what you see in the original trilogy, Leia is, where you would say, we'd have that old classic thing that we used to say so much, are Force sensitive. They kind of sense there's something going on. You bring that up to date with the Force healer in Andor, somebody who's aware of the Force, can almost feel it but can't affect it. Maybe even Chirrut in Rogue One. So there's characters like that, and it always felt to me like Leia was on that sort of periphery of it, whereas in the sequel trilogy they really lay into it to the point where she could have been just as great of a Jedi as Luke, but she didn't want to do it and just laid that lightsaber down. Personally, never mad keen on. I don't think the character needed the Force to be a strong character.
And I think they actually got that balance fairly right for a lot of the expanded universe. She had other priorities, you know, she's running the government, and you know, she's a mother and stuff. So even like with Luke, there's big jumps, isn't there, really, from even you could say from the end of A New Hope to Empire, where he's kind of able to just about move a lightsaber. And I think there's these bigger off-screen jumps with Rey.
Yes.
So they kind of stand out. But then you go, well, yes, she has had training with Luke. You know, at the end of The Last Jedi, she's with Leia. Leia has had training with Luke also. And so it's like, how much do we know Leia didn't impart at least some knowledge and understanding to Rey? Plus, she's got those Jedi books as well. She's got the whole Jedi library. Jedi for dummies, isn't it, really? So.
Page turners they are not, as Yoda said. Just one thing to say, I think the original trilogy takes place over roughly 4 years. 3 years between Star Wars and Empire, 1 year between Empire and Jedi. Phantom Menace to Attack of the Clones is 10 years.
Exactly.
And then 3 years to Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
Force Awakens and Last Jedi literally overlap. From the start of The Force Awakens to the end of The Last Jedi, you're talking weeks.
Hours.
And then there's a year to the Rise of Skywalker. So that whole trilogy takes place, let's say, 18 months at most.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of progression for the characters, as much as you would say there is for any of the other trilogy heroes. So I do think Boyega's kind of got a point there. Even if they stick with what the characters do, maybe the explanation of it could have been sharpened up a little bit. Maybe let's give John the benefit of the doubt. Maybe that's kind of what he was pointing to. But then you made a really good point of a guy of Boyega's age would have probably played KOTOR or Old Republic, or certainly Force Unleashed. So for him as a fan as well as an actor in the trilogy, to pick on those as things he would like to pick up with, I can only imagine Force Unleashed he's kind of thinking more of the powers than
which
the
is
plot.
very OP, isn't it?
Mega OP. If we expanded the law, we have to do it within the respective boundaries that stay true. So I think we all would like that. And then he says about Luke disappearing on a rock. Clearly he wasn't a fan of that, and every fan's entitled to their opinion on the ultimate fate of Luke, who does come back in 9. Let's not forget, we get a great Force Ghost moment back on Acto. So it's tricky to be too critical because he is being asked in the moment up on stage.
Yeah.
And we all have an opinion on it. God knows we're podcasters, so we're supposed to have an opinion, aren't we?
Yeah. One question I've got, which is slight tangent based, so I apologise, everybody. And is this just something that seems to be slightly more overused in the latter period of Star Wars? Is the Force being a mysterious kind of thing and we don't really know what it is? Basically, they overuse them as an excuse for people to be slightly more overpowered.
I always think there's a flow and an ebb and a flow to the Force, but I think that probably more from the prequel era because of really what you hear in sort of back end of Clones and into Sith about how the Sith are rising, so it's just a wave that's going like this.
Yeah.
And, at one point the Sith are on the crest of it, and another point the Jedi are on the crest of it. And then it kind of disappears for a while because the Emperor's out of the picture for the most part. And now this Force Awakens era, it's kind of crashing back.
No listeners' question this week, so get them sent in. However, me and he will be at Echo Live this Saturday. So if you see a couple of Fanthas walking around with their shirts bulging with weird shapes, it's clearly that we've basically shoplifted a load of stuff from Echo Live. So stop us, and before you ask us if we've actually paid for anything, maybe ask us a question, because we can answer it then and there, because we will do a Walk and Talk live episode on Saturday. But if you aren't at Echo and you want to send us a listener's question, Mr. Newbold can tell you how you can do it.
I certainly can, and here's how.
Email radio@fanthatracks.com. Head to links.fanthatracks.com for links to our social media feeds, Fantha Tracks TV and Fantha Tracks Radio. Thanks to James Semple for the Fantha Tracks intro, Blues Harvest for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. New episodes drop Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 o'clock UK time. Our weekly news show, Good Morning Tatooine, goes live Sundays at 9 o'clock UK time on Facebook and YouTube. And remember, Fantha Tracks is absolutely free, so it costs nothing to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
And that's me done with this episode, Mark. I'll see you at Echo.
I'll see you at Echo.
Destination Reddit.
Echo. And for the Evening with the Stars the night before.
Last time, the food was phenomenal.
And I did think that, yeah. So
it was lovely.
Yeah. Because it was one of the few times I've done an evening where I haven't gone, right, where's the closest McDonald's?
2 for 2 so far, because the meal at Star Wars Fan Fun Day was incredibly good.
That good as well. Yeah, actually,
the soup was amazing. It was fantastic.
There you go. So that's the TripAdvisor review title right there. The soup was amazing. So right, until we see you at Redditch or you listen to our voices next time, stay safe, take care, and as always, may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's another episode of Making Tracks.